Kia ora koutou katoa. Last Wednesday, Ash Wednesday, we began the 40 days and 40 nights of Lent. For those of a mathematical bent, it goes from Ash Wednesday, February the 14th, to Easter Sunday, and when you count it all up, it's 47 days. But the 6 Sundays are treated as mini Easters, when chocolate and alcohol can go back on the menu. So those days aren't part of Lent. And then the conclusion of Lent is actually Holy Saturday, not the next day. So that all adds up to 40. My reference to chocolate and alcohol is Lent was for many centuries and still for some today a time of fasting. There are actually 4 Lenten disciplines: prayer, fasting, Bible study, and almsgiving. But it's the practice of abstinence from certain foods that gets the most publicity. Today I'd like to focus on prayer. Our first reading today, well known from funerals and from the bird's song, Turn, 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 comes from Ecclesiastes 3. There's a time for this and a time for that. Not that God wills this or that, or we will this or that. As Lloyd Gearing says in his title, the book, his study of Ecclesiastes, such is life. There is killing, and there is healing. There is hating, and there is loving. There is war, and there is peace. The hymn writer, the late Shirley Murray, turned this passage into both a song and a prayer. Unfortunately, contra Ecclesiastes, Shirley in the first line puts God in the mix as the one who has reasons. And she leaves out the killing, hating, and war, for it's difficult to equate those with God's so-called reasons. As per my sermon last week, I don't believe in a personal deity who has reasons and control over killing, hating, and war. The purpose, however, of Shirley's song is not to petition God, like a prayer of old, but to encourage us to believe, hope, and love into a better way of being. She wants to encourage us, no matter how difficult and painful life may be, to keep on believing, hoping, and loving. And she wants to encourage us as a community to acknowledge the past and present with all its frailty and failings, and then to work together, hope together, love together, into a better future. Or in John Smong's words, Shirley is encouraging us individually and as a community to be agents of the world's transformation, to be bearers of divinity, to be givers and receivers of the deepest meaning of life, which is love. I interpret the believing in the song as an affirmation of our efforts to transform the world and sow it with love. I don't interpret the believing as affirming a super being deity who will fix it all up in the end. Verbal and written prayers can be fraught when they address a personal God who is above or in heaven or somewhere other than earth, and that brings a set of problems. Such language separates God from the planet like a potter from the pot. It also, as in the potter-pot analogy, assumes that God shapes and fixes or doesn't fix our planetary problems. I think there are ways to honor the transcendence, the beyondness of God, without resorting to separatist language. Just as I think there are ways to honor the immanence, the closer than our breathness of God, without reducing God to a mirror of our human needs. but many of the old prayers address the alleged powerful Mr. Fix-It God. And in the absence of a fix, it is not illogical to blame God for not cleaning up the ecological mess our planet's in, let alone the messes of personal lives and our corporate lives, like war and disease, greed. There's an old prayer that is different from how most of us think. It's said to be several centuries old and comes from Portugal. It goes like this. I am the heat of your hearth on the cold winter nights, the friendly shade screening you from the summer sun, and my fruits are refreshing draughts, quenching your thirst as you journey on. I am the beam that holds your house, the board of your table, the bed on which you lie, and the timber that builds your boat. I am the handle of your hoe, the door of your homestead, the wood of your cradle, and the shell of your coffin. I am the bread of kindness and the flower of beauty. Ye who pass by, listen to my prayer. Harm me not. The first three sentences, and maybe the last, seem to be about wood. The I am is wood. And the point of the prayer is that wood for the author is all-pervasive, and by implication evokes both wonder and thanksgiving. The last sentence is an ethical directive to humans to do no harm. It's tempting to think that the fourth sentence doesn't fit, for how is wood the bread of kindness and the flower of beauty? Can wood be kind and beautiful? Why I like this prayer is that, appealing to the poet in me, it leads me to appreciate wood and the culture from which this prayer arose. It invites us to see in God beauty and beauty in see God and beauty in God. To see kindness in God and God in kindness. To see in wood the penciled writing of the divine connectedness. Just like silent prayer, written prayer doesn't have to start with "Dear God," like a letter to a grandparent. It can begin from any number of perspectives. It's where it leads that matters. Of course, the admonition to do no harm no longer cuts it. It's like Michael Lunig's provocative prayer when he plays with the Lord's Prayer, saying, "Father, do not forgive them, for they now know precisely what they do." We now know that not only have we harmed the planet, cutting, using, polluting, and exploiting vast areas of land, sea, and sky, but we've harmed beyond the point of repair. We now know we've destroyed whole species. We have believed ourselves to have a biblical mandate to subdue the earth and use it, abuse it, how we wish. This is a license for self-centeredness and greed. We now know that this is a destructive theology, and a theology that has nurtured the worst of developers and entrepreneurs and the selfishness and greed within us. Yes, we need to remind ourselves and teach our young to do no harm, but we also need to restore and repair. As a communion prayer I wrote says, we need to find the means to repair, not just the tears in our own lives, but the tears of the world, the tearing apart of relationships. Those relationships being between the whole range of inhabitants of this ecological system called Earth. And to do this repair, we need all the science, skills, and resources we can muster. For we have gone so far that even our own species is under threat. Like church prayers that used to refer to all people simply as men, and God solely in masculine imagery, we need a gentle revolution where our interspecies dependency, like in that wood prayer, is acknowledged and our future caring for each other encouraged. Another reason, and maybe the paramount one why I like this old Portuguese prayer, is it invites us into a different world in order to think like, be like, and pray like wood. This is what the best of spiritual disciplines do. They invite us out of our egotism, our smallness, our circumscribed world, to go on a journey into a vast otherness, in order that in time we return to know ourselves and our world afresh. Try praying this prayer with a piece of wood in your hand. Say it out loud twice or thrice. Allow your mind to journey into the world of wood, and then in silence try to stay there for a while. The ancient wisdom that the health of our forests will determine the health of our human communities is not to be ignored. At their best, polytheistic worldviews, like you can find in Mātauranga Māori theology, philosophy, invite us into a symbiotic relationships. A number of tribes can recall how in times past tohunga and craftsmen would enter the forest, the realm of Tāne, to seek out a tree suitable for a purpose, say to be made into a waka, a canoe, and then by karakia discuss the matter with the spirit of Tāne, protector of the forest, balancing human need with the need of the ecosystem. For many, there was an unspoken understanding that the health of the tribe was dependent on the health of the forest, and that we humans needed to assist Tāne as kaitiaki, protectors of this relationship. The 20th century Welsh poet R.S. Thomas writes, "Not as in the old days I pray, God, my life is not what it was. Once I would have asked for healing, I go now to be doctored. I would have not long wrestling with you, wearing you down. Hear my prayer, Lord. Hear my prayer as though you were deaf." It begins to appear that this is not what prayer is about. Prayer is the annihilation of differences, the consciousness of myself in you, you in me. This poem begins with a critique of verbal petitioning, persistent prayer that was premised on the idea of God as an all-powerful being who, like an ancient lord, could grant favours. But then it moves into redefining prayer as the annihilation of differences. Not unlike the author of the Portuguese prayer, annihilating the difference between us and wood, and extolling a oneness, a merging of consciousness. I'm reminded of the well-known Whakatoki proverb, ko ao te awa, ko te awa, ko ao. I am in the river, and the river is in me. Or the saying attributed to Jesus by the Jewish mystic who authored the fourth gospel, the Father, that is God, and I are one. This verse, rather than asserting the divinity of Jesus, points rather to the spirituality of mystics and that awareness of a person being in God or one with God. So the doing of prayer is multifarious, including singing, swimming, helping, holding, giving, cuddling, caring, loving, being loved, listening, laughing, walking, wandering. I heard on the radio last week Psalm 137, not on a religious radio station, but The Breeze, I think. It was Boney M's song, By the Rivers of Babylon, which reflects a time after 597 BCE when members of the Jewish community were kept captives in Babylon. It's a song, a poem, a lament, and a prayer. It has, I think, ongoing resonance for those who both grieve the loss of what was and seek hope in what might come. And sitting by a river can carry both grief and hope. For the river is in us, and we are in the river, just as we are in God, and God is in us. Blessings to you this week.